What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales podcast. I am Scott Leese here today with my good friend and partner in the Surf and Sales Summit, coming to you November 15th to 19th from Costa Rica. Check it out, surfandsales.com. My good friend and partner, Richard Harris. What's up, big guy? How are you?
I'm good, man. I am it's been a while. I feel like I haven't seen you in like 2 or 3 weeks. So you keep avoiding me. So it's nice that we have this podcast.
In practicality, it has been like 9 days.
It just feels like a lifetime because you keep avoiding me every time I try and see you at Dreamforce or come to Austin. Like you're just avoiding me these days.
Yeah.
So it's
I try to avoid most people for
this
most
is true.
Things, to be honest.
This is true.
It's not like a discriminatory thing against you. It's
right.
Just, it's me, Richard. It's not you.
Right.
It's me.
The joke is, and before we introduce our guest, is that one day when I have a lot of money and a lot of time, I will go through all the recordings I have of Scott Leese and just pull the part where he says, "I hate blank." And he'll list out, there'll be an entire recording of, "I hate people. I hate water.
That's great.
I hate air. I hate microphones. I hate, whatever it is." So one day that'll be the coup de grace of our ultimate podcast.
You'll release it right when I decide to run for president. And it'll just be like a deep fake saboteur move.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cause that's my style. So
that's your style. Well, listen,
it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. We're here with a special guest today. We're not going to talk to him about football whatsoever, American or UK football, because he doesn't know anything about that. Doesn't care.
Correct.
This guy sees things through the eyes of an ex-procurement director, Richard, and I know you love procurement.
Yes.
This is like one of your favorite
I
topics.
found the person who loves us. Oh, thanks, Richard.
He does.
That's very kind.
He is the only one other than you. But we've got Mike Lander, who's the CEO and founder of Piscare Sales Consultancy, and we want to welcome him to the show. How's it going, Mike?
Very good, Scott. Thank you, and thanks, Richard. Thanks for inviting me. Thoroughly looking forward to this.
Scott, why are you always bringing in our competitors, man? You said you bring in all the guests. Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
are we scraping the bottom of the barrel?
No. There's two reasons, maybe. Number one.
Thanks, Richard, for being. Yeah, I'm at the bottom. Wow. Yeah. At least I'm in the barrel. I'm in the barrel, though. I'm delighted. You're in the barrel.
You're British, so I figure I can take this kind of humor approach.
Well, there's two reasons.
I'll get you back.
Number one, most people who do what we do are actually pretty smart and have a lot of good things to share. And the second reason is I want to know all of their tactics and tricks. So I'm inviting the competition in, and I'm poisoning their wine glass.
Clever.
So as they leave, all their trade secrets stay behind.
Right.
So
Anyway,
so Scott Mike, Machiavelli, not Scott Leese. Okay.
Exactly.
He's 100%. That Richard believe. So Mike, tell us a little bit about where your company Piscare, like where is your focus? Like, is there a particular segment and market size? All that kind of stuff. Give everybody some context of who you are.
So I believe in kind of like narrow and deep. That's my kind of mantra about focus, because it's just me. It's not a team of 100 people. It's me. And so what I focus on is I do a lot of work with marketing agencies, particularly in North America and in the UK. So full service marketing agencies, typically 100 people up to 2,000 or 3,000 people. And I focus on a very particular aspect of sales. So I focus on opportunity qualification, opportunity conversion, and negotiation. And I do all of that through the eyes of an ex-buyer. People say, how are you different? I'm like, I've got all this methodology and I've got all of these insights. And the reality is salespeople like to talk to someone who used to be on the opposite side of the fence. So I'm an ex-buyer that now works with sellers. And that gives me a small edge when I'm competing with other firms. Yeah.
It gives you a really good edge. So, but I want to ask a question. Why did you change uniforms? Right? Why did you go from buying to, now becoming, to the dark side?
So the gamekeeper turned poacher. What happened?
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed being in procurement. I found it a fascinating role. I did it for about on and off, 20 odd years. And then we were running a procurement outsourcing consultancy. We ran procurement for private equity backed portfolio companies. We ran that. We sold that business to another consulting firm, and then I decided it was time for a change. And I was talking to my wife one day, who's much smarter than me, ex kind of tech CMO, and just wondering about what should I do next. And she said, "Well, look, you've been a buyer for donkey's years. Why don't you talk to salespeople? Why don't you work with salespeople now and help them understand that these procurement people are not the devil, we're not to be avoided, and we're not just holding a gun at people's heads. Try that." And that was as simple as it got. As these ideas often are, the kind of simplicity is after all the complexity. And that's what I do. And that's why I do it. So I see things from a different perspective now, and that gives me an angle.
For somebody who's listening, who has not been in a sales cycle that has to deal with procurement, can you give me your simple third grade level explanation of what procurement means and when somebody in their career might get to get a job where they have to go through this procurement process and learn this stuff?
Sure.
Where is that level where people start to have to deal with this?
So in simple terms, what we do, we tend to show up in bigger organizations. So bigger organizations that are your clients, that's when we tend to arrive. Typically, if there's third-party spend. So what do I mean by third-party spend? Really simple. In any business, you've got costs which are headcount costs, staff costs, and you've got costs which are not staff costs, other stuff, IT and marketing and infrastructure and all sorts. All of that stuff, when it gets big, obviously it gets a bit out of hand. And so often companies will employ a procurement director. And that person's job is to look at all of that non-headcount spend, try and optimize it. So yes, try and reduce the cost. They're going to try and also make things more efficient. So they might have hundreds of suppliers. So they're saying, well, that's a bit inefficient. Why don't we use fewer suppliers? They look at the market. They see where the market's going as suppliers of those goods and services and say, well, are we adopting the latest innovation? Could we be doing more? And so they're trying to make things more efficient from a cost point of view and obviously a process point of view. And most importantly, and Scott and Richard, I guess if your listeners do nothing else but understand a simple thing when they meet procurement people, these buyers, we talk a lot internally about risk. Our job is to manage risk. Yes, there's loads of other stuff, but we have to manage risk because we're the kind of guardians and the custodians of governance, how things are done inside the organization. So a salesperson that doesn't understand that and ends up trying to negotiate with the procurement person and tries to keep selling will be in the shit. It won't work because they're trying to sell a dream.
Would you say most salespeople who enter this world for the first time end up overselling and end up in the shit?
Holy shit!
Have to learn the hard way. They have to learn the hard way. My God,
99% of the time. Yeah. When your meters is typically organization, let's say it's VC funded, it's high growth, let's say it's tech company, it's scaling up, and they average order value was like 50K. They then get VC funding or PE funding if they're fortunate, or Series A. They then start to accelerate rapidly. And to do that, your average order value goes from 50K to maybe 300K. Well, when you get to like that kind of 300K mark, you're selling to bigger companies. By its nature, you must be, because they haven't got infinite amounts of money. So you're taking a percentage of their total spend, but it's now a bigger total spend. So you're going to meet these people that look after that money. And those people are procurement. And so when salespeople start to enter into that territory where procurement people exist, the first thing they do normally is, let's say they're talking to the CIO. So they're trying to sell a tech deal into a CIO. So Richard, it'd be good to get your views on this as well. But let's say the deal's kind of worth $500,000-ish. So they meet the CIO and they've met them at a conference and they start having a conversation. They're invited into a discussion and they start shaping some kind of opportunity. And it turns out that's kind of $500,000 worth of opportunity-ish. And they spend 3 or 4 months talking to the CIO and talking to the head of infrastructure and talking to the head of security and They think they're doing a really great job. They're talking to the stakeholders. They're doing their training. They're using Neat, Richard. I think Neat's brilliant. Very good. It's a great model. If you haven't bought Richard's book, buy Richard's book. They're using Neat and they're doing everything they should be doing. And then the CIO says, there's just one more thing.
Right.
You just need to meet procurement and it will all be good. So they trot off and they come and meet me. Now I'm a busy bloke. I'm doing 20 projects at any one time. And they come and meet me. And I say, okay, so you've got through and you've got 15 minutes. Why are you here? And then the CIO said, I just need to come and see you to get a kind of contract signed.
Yeah.
And I say, I'll come back to you. And I put the phone down. I go and see the CIO and I say, what the are you doing? $500,000 with a supplier that we've never used before in a category that I've got lots of suppliers with. And we spent years building a preferred suppliers list. And you want to go off piste and use someone random. Why didn't you come and speak to me? And then it all unravels. And then the supplier gets ghosted. The salesperson gets pissed off. And you've just wasted 3 to 6 months of your life.
Yeah.
Did that resonate, Richard or Scott?
Yeah. I mean, I learned this a while ago. Clearly you haven't read this part of the book.
I'm not the I haven't finished it
there's
yet.
a whole there's a section about procurement. Like there's a whole thing in there about procurement. And the things that I only learned this a couple of years ago, was that, and you tell me if I'm wrong, procurement would like to be involved way sooner than the end of the deal.
Absolutely.
Way sooner, right? And there are two challenges. There's the challenge that the salesperson would like to talk to the procurement person, but they're afraid that if Scott is if Scott's my champion, that I'm going to offend Scott because Scott's going to think I'm trying to go around him. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is that even though Scott's a really smart CIO, nobody ever taught Scott that he should get procurement in way sooner, right? So there's this lack of education that exists for all parties.
Correct.
And, that's the biggest challenge because it's an easy thing to say, look, you're going to spend $500,000 with me, Scott. I know there's going to be 15 people who need to talk about this at a finance level. Look, the best and happiest customers have always gotten me to procurement sooner so that Scott, they don't turn around and tell you they're going to delay this because they're going to go shop it around now.
Correct.
So when do you think is the right time, Scott, to go do this? Because if we spend the next 3 months on this $500,000 deal and you don't bring me to procurement till later, I don't want you to be, caught in a bad spot. Like that's how I've learned and taught to teach people this, but it's not taught. Like nobody teaches us this.
No.
And I will say this. So Mike, maybe in your experience you did. Do procurement people not want to tell, the internal people at your organization that you should come in sooner? Otherwise you're going to get bombarded with a bunch of shit. Or do the procurement people, has it just never been taught to them to go, oh, we should teach people how to leverage procurement in a healthy way? Do you know what I mean?
So,
what's it like on that side?
So two things. First of all, I quite like thinking about simple models about the scenario. So I call it the triangle of doom. And a lot of people do. Procurement, the CIO, and the seller. It's the triangle of doom.
I thought for sure legal was going to be in there somewhere.
Well, then it's
procurement is partial.
It's a square.
Like procurement.
It's a square now.
It's the square of doom.
We got a trapezoid. We've got a
trapezoid. We're gonna have a hexagon soon.
Yeah.
Richard, when I was in those kind of roles, and we worked in some huge global investment banks once. What I found very interesting was the sourcing people were called sourcing, procurement, different kind of names. We're not the ones that raise the purchase order. We're the ones that find the right kind of suppliers. They desperately want to talk to what we call their internal business partners, their IBPs, because they want to build a relationship with Scott. So I want to build a relationship with Scott as the procurement director, responsible for IT, because I want Scott to reach out to me whenever he's got a problem that we might be able to help with. So actually, it's not that I think I'll get swamped. It's I really, really want Scott to work with me. However, there's a problem. If you look at the career path of a procurement person, let's take a retailer as a good example. And let's just pick a name, any name, Walmart, just for an example. So let's say I've been a procurement person in Walmart and I've been buying apples, oranges, bananas, and fruit juice. So I'm what they call a direct procurement person. I buy direct goods, the goods that affect the consumer, and the cost of those goods affects the profit, the gross profit of the company. So I've been doing that for, say, 5 years. And then someone says, Mike, what's your ambition? And I say, I'd like to be a regional procurement director or a regional chief procurement officer. And they go, great. We think you've got the ability, but you've only bought direct goods and services, apples, bananas, oranges, orange juice. You need to buy indirect. I go, okay, sounds interesting. What's indirect? So they're like, well, IT services, marketing, marketing, infrastructure, cleaning services. I'm like, oh, okay. And they say, right, you're going to go into IT procurement, first of all. You're going to work with Scott's team in IT procurement to buy IT. I go, okay, boss, off I go. I bang on Scott's door. Hey, Scott, it's Mike. And you go, right, who are you? I work in Walmart. I've got a new job. I'm now the IT procurement category leader. I'm proud and delighted to meet you, Scott. And you gently close the door with me on the opposite side when you know I used to buy apples, oranges, and bananas. I'm now about to buy very complex IT infrastructure. So the problem you've got now is Scott knows that I know nothing about IT. And yet I'm meant to be the guy who's going to run a procurement process to buy critical IT infrastructure. So the reason, Richard, it often goes wrong is because we don't have credibility. So having category knowledge becomes really important when you're the procurement director talking with an internal business partner. That's the problem.
That's great. Because, I live in this world. I love this kind of stuff. I love negotiating and learning about this. And so it feels very similar, Scott, to like when you hire an enablement person who's never sold. Right. And,
exactly.
It's like,
absolutely.
There's a lack of trust there.
Yeah.
Whether real or just perceived. Right.
Yeah.
In that world. So I got it. What are some things that, for those who are listening and they're in deals with procurement, what are 3 things a salesperson could learn to understand procurement better, to make that relationship less contentious, right? Aside from figuring out how to get in front of them sooner, which we talked about, what are a couple of things that someone could walk out of here going, oh, wow, I really learned that from Mike? Because I sure as shit didn't learn it from Scott and Richard.
Maybe.
So I think understanding what motivates us. So what drives us. So first of all, I think I'd look at our priorities. So if you're listening to this and you're driving and, you're thinking, wow, this is starting to get a bit complex. It isn't. Just think about what are procurement's priorities? What are they interested in? So they're interested in savings. So you have to understand they want to drive savings. That's how they're comped. It's a primary objective. In the kind of surveys that are done, it's the number 1, 2, or 3 priority normally in any year.
Does that mean don't spend? Or does that mean spend in order to save?
Yeah, okay. Spend more efficiently.
Because I think a lot of people hear that and think
discount.
Their objective is not to spend. Objective is not to spend. So they're just over there going, nope, 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 nope.
And their objective is to help. So a really important point that your listeners need to go away with, Richard and Scott, is it's not my money. It's not my money. It's Scott's money, who's the IT director. My job is to help him spend it wisely in a risk assured way. I don't get to say who Scott works with. I have a lot of influence, but I don't have control. So savings is number 1. There's different kinds of savings, but that would just it'll just confuse people. But bluntly, savings are on the table. I'll come back to discounting in a second, Richard. Now, that's a fascinating topic. So savings. Secondly, we're looking for innovation. We want innovative suppliers. We want the early stage company that's got past, the $1 million revenue mark, and they've got a product and it works and it's different and it creates potentially transformation in our business. So we want innovation. We absolutely must have quality and reliability. When I'm buying, I'm trying to find out, how reliable are you? And when you show up to see me in several meetings and several interventions via email, if you don't do what you say you'll do as the sales lead, you're telling me you're not a reliable organization. So instantly, I'm going to back away from you. So I want savings, innovation, quality and reliability. And as we said at the beginning, I want a well-governed process. I want the lowest risk I can get as a supplier. And so you've got to think about risk. And my view would be, talk about risk in a kind of proactive way, a positive way, when you meet procurement people. Don't avoid it. So some simple things, I'd start with that. And the second thing I'd think is, look at their persona. Let's say that Scott now isn't the CIO. Let's say he's the CMO. CMOs typically more from the creative angle, more interested in the brand and performance of the business in terms of performance marketing and brand marketing. But if you look at procurement and look at our personality types as a typical theme, we're very rational, we're very analytical, we're extremely well-trained negotiators, and we're tough-minded. So you've got to tune in to who I am, and I'm different to who Scott is.
That's really good. That's one of the best explanations I've heard of a lot of things out of here. I want to come back and then I'll let Scott ask some questions. But I've come back to discounting, right?
Yeah.
Because, the old adage is, well, you got to save 2 or 3% so the procurement can get, their fair share and all this shit. And, but help people understand how procurement perceives discount, other than they're just trying to beat you up. Or is that really it? Like, because I know that's how you're paid, right? The more you save, the more you get paid. But how can a salesperson understand the procurement's view of a discount in a way that's productive for both parties, right? Not just this sort of, shit, I got to take another 10% off.
So let's split it into kind of two parts as a kind of question. The first thing is savings. A simple definition: in order for me to be able to tell my CFO that we got a saving of 10%, would be, last year we bought something, we spent $1 million on this thing. This year we've bought the same thing, but rather than spending $1 million for the same quantity, we've only spent $900,000. I just saved 10%, $100,000. That's a true cost saving. There are other types of savings, but the one you want to focus on is that's a true cost saving. So I'll have a savings target. My savings target typically in any one year, between kind of 10 and 20%, depending on how tough the market is, across all the stuff that I buy. So the first thing is, yes, I am trying to save money. However, when you enter into discussion with procurement about, and you start thinking about discounting, so the first thing I'll say is, okay, let's take Richard this time. Richard, kind of last year, we bought this stuff that you're selling, that your competitors are selling. We spent $1 million on this stuff, whatever the stuff is. We spent $1 million, and we're thinking of retendering it. So we're going out to market, and you're on the list, and you've got through to the the last 3. But obviously we're not going to spend, I wouldn't have told you it's $1 million, by the way, at the beginning. So, in my head, I know, so it cost us $1 million last year. So I'd be starting off with, well, let's see if I can get it for $800,000. So I'd start at 20% in my head.
Oof.
Wow.
However, so I'm starting at $800,000.
That sounds
So-
horrible.
Exactly. So you don't know that we spent $1 million. You've got an idea that it's roughly between
All I
900
hear in my head is this guy is trying to get one over on me right now.
Yes.
Aha.
And
So,
I don't
Scott.
like it.
So follow the thread. So the next thing is, so in the procurement person's head, my head, I know what I spent. You've been putting together solutions. I've got 3 of them from different suppliers. And yours is coming in at 1.05. Yeah. Your competitors have come in at 895 and one's coming at 1.2. So I've got a nice spread now. So now I'm kind of like interested in what's going on. And I say to Richard, your price, Richard, it's not going to work. We like the solution. It's not our favorite. It's okay. Your price is nowhere near the mark. Nowhere near. Yeah, I'm going to need at least 20% off that. So go away, sharpen your pencil, come back. There are still some of those old-fashioned bang the table negotiators around. Thankfully, they're fewer than they used to be. If you say to me, Richard, in that meeting, Mike, I can't go back to my sales director with 20% off. I can't. But I could give you a discount of 10%. So I'm sat there going, okay, so I'm now at 800-ish. What's going on in my head psychologically now is, wow, he gave 10%. He caved for nothing. He gave me 10% for nothing. There's at least 25% there. There's at least 25%. Yes. I know there is. You've not traded a bean.
Nothing.
I mean, you guys do this for a living. I'm telling grandma I had to suck eggs. You traded nothing, but you reacted instantly and you gave me a discount. So I'm going to treat you as a commodity because you don't value your own service. And I know there's lots more to come because you've offered it straight off the bat. Discounting's a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna tell people what I say when this stuff happens so they can walk out of here going, well, shit, what do I say now? I would say to somebody like Mike, hey, Mike, I appreciate where you're coming from. I think there's a way we could both leverage commercial terms to our benefits, right? If you can provide some marketing support, we can get 2% off. If you give me a longer term contract, it's 2%. If you prepay the whole contract, it's 3%. If you buy more seats, licenses, it's another 3%. Yep. Which ones do you want? So now,
correct.
In my mind, I've mitigated myself from giving away too many discounts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I've shown that, okay, now we're horse trading. Now we're actually going to have a casual, comfortable conversation, because anybody in procurement is not going to be offended by what I just said.
No, not at all.
Not at all. They know the game, and so we find a way to play it and do it in a way that's beneficial.
So here's my thing, because I can tell you two guys, you love this shit. I know, Richard. I know.
But I do love it. I
know it's like a sport to you. Okay.
Yes.
I listen to all this.
I hate procurement. Myself. I hate negotiation. This is all part of the reporting.
I find this exhausting.
It is.
And therefore, yeah, okay. Well, you said it is. I do not. This is me talking. I don't feel like this is a good use of my time, an effective use of my time. So, and this is me, speaking as a business owner for the last 5 years. I not have my VP of sales hat on right now whatsoever. But I'm just thinking to myself, you should give me your best offer, and I'm going to tell you yes or no, and then we should move on, because I don't have time for all this stuff, right? And whenever somebody postures this kind of thing and comes back to me, I literally just tell them no. I have a simple 2-page contract. Okay. The deals I do are $100,000-ish. All right. For 6 months worth of work.
Yeah.
I sent this agreement out to a client prospect a week and a half ago or so. I didn't hear anything. I check in like, oh, it's with procurement, it's with legal. Da, da, da. I got back, I'm not kidding you, a 3-page document full of red lines and suggested changes and terms and discounts. And I wrote back and said, no, I can't do this. Sorry. And I got a message back from the CEO saying, "Hey, what happened? I heard that the deal is stuck." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not fucking negotiating all these things. I'm like, you just wasted hundreds of dollars with your legal counsel reviewing all of this. No, I'm out." Less than 24 hours later, I had a signed agreement, the original one, in my inbox. So I just think to myself, why are we doing all this song and dance? Why? I don't care about
different world.
I literally don't care about. I don't care about procurement's goals. I don't care about them. I don't care about their metrics. I'm that guy. I'm that guy. I'm like, I don't have time for this.
Let me ask you another question.
If it doesn't bugger off, I don't care.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, Scott. But as Scott, you know, the person that runs the business, and you know, you're selling services. So I would wager that you've got a very, very good sales pipeline.
I mean, it's okay. Yeah.
And you've been selling for how many years? Probably 20, 30 years?
20 plus. But I think I know where you're going. So finish the thought.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong in that situation, because you've got confidence, you've got opportunity, you have what we call a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You have choices. You have other opportunities you could go after.
But isn't that how everybody should run their sales process? The only reason people entertain all this stuff is because they don't have enough things in their pipeline, right?
So let's take a different service type, Scott. Let's say it's something that might affect the reputation of the buyer's company. So this time, the CEO overrode procurement and legal, because your services are important, they deliver value, but if anything goes wrong, it's unlikely to screw things up badly for the company. Is that right, broadly? You deliver a lot of value.
I mean, I would argue that's not accurate, but I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, but if it's a service like IT infrastructure, then rightly, someone's going to go, much as we want to work with Scott, and we genuinely want to work with Scott because you've been recommended, you are referred, you deliver great value, you know your economic value. If Scott won't negotiate on some, what we see as basic stuff, we can't promise a well-governed process, and we can't guarantee that things aren't going to go wrong, and we can't guarantee that our name will be in the paper.
Yeah.
And that's why it's situational, I think, Scott. It's situational.
I agree. But my counterpoint would be, yeah, you can't guarantee that your name won't end up in the paper, but the alternative is to work with a lesser than provider, which has its own set of risks. Great. You found somebody who's willing to negotiate on all these terms and everything. They're probably willing to negotiate because they don't have a strong enough pipeline. They don't have a good enough name in the industry or whatever. And maybe they don't deliver as good as services. So you're trading one set of risk for another set of risk.
Sometimes you are. And in fact, in one of your recent podcasts, you said the guy was talking about innovation and kind of like, you know, the best product, best features. And one of you said, actually, well proven, the best product doesn't always win.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So it's also the other thing that's different too. And you know, Scott, you and I've worked together where I've worked for you, and I know how you teach about discounting, right? Like, so I have an intimate knowledge of in a traditional business world. You and I can leverage things, and even Mike can leverage it differently because we run our own business. Yeah. Right. It's a little bit easier for us because we don't have things like board pressure and CEO and quarterly goals and all those things. And I know you, Scott, I know that you have built businesses, you know, particularly the last one at Qualia, like where you were like, nope, we're never discounting. We know they're going to come back, right? You had the advantage. That's
what I literally told them. I was like, whatever, don't sign up now. I'll see you next year when you buy and you sign these terms and it's twice as expensive.
And I also know too that you were on the right rocket ship for that because it was so innovative. There wasn't a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, fair. Right. But aren't we then just helping people who are selling an inferior product or service with a inferior sized pipeline, finding ways to get something done by getting battered by procurement people and bending over backwards and making a lot of work and a lot of stressy situations for people where they're going back and forth and doing all this song and dance? No?
That's just part of the game, man. And which I also find interesting, Scott, is that as competitive as you are, No, but as
I
competitive
don't like
as
that
you
game.
are, yeah, this is a game you don't like because I know you love to win more than any person, and you hate to
Yes,
lose
so
more than anybody.
I don't like exactly. So I don't like to play games where the chances of me losing are high.
That's the challenge. So the other thing that I will say, and I say this to people all the time, one of my first, if I'd have done my job well as a salesperson and set up my pricing right, is I would say to someone like Mike, I'd be like, hey, Mike, I understand you're looking for a bit of a discount. You know, our pricing is based on what the market dictates. How would you like to proceed? And now he's got to negotiate against himself versus me negotiating against myself. So there's lots of these little things. You know,
There's also the value piece. I mean,
yeah.
Scott, that example, I would imagine that it sounds like you were selling to the C-suite. Smart. You sell to the C-suite, then you've got political cover.
Yeah.
They want to work with you because they trust you. The risk thing, you talk about risk. The CEO's view, I would wager in that circumstance, was the lowest risk, highest outcome route forward is to work with Scott. And the CEO said, I'll take any contract risk, any legal risk, because I think the risk is low. And the price equates to the value we're going to get more than 10 to 1. Now, I don't know what happened, but I suspect in that person's head, there was a value equation. A big thing that a lot of sellers, in my view, screw up when they do meet people like me is they have no understanding of the economic value that's created off the back of the service that they're selling.
Agreed.
And then they're surprised, shocked, irritated when I won't play ball.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I got to cut us off for a second. Scott, we have a sponsor. So you want to mention our sponsor?
You're the guy for this stuff, man.
No, but you just told me
I do the intro, you do the ad roll. You know?
No, but you got to remember it because you're the one who signed them, so it's on you.
This episode is brought to you by the Tech Sales Accelerator. If you're looking to jump into the world of tech sales and tech go-to-market and software sales and all that kind of stuff, check out techsalesaccelerator.com. And we appreciate their sponsorship, their commitment to helping people find new sales jobs in this tough environment, tough market. And the founder of Tech Sales Accelerator, by the way, will be at Surf and Sales this November. So cool. Cool sidebar.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, this is the part.
How do we spend so much time already? This podcast is almost over. I don't know what happened.
I know. Oh
my God. This is because I got all fired up and angry all of a sudden, and I'm challenging these two guys.
But it's emotions, Scott. What I want, people never forget how you make them feel. So you made me feel something because you were genuinely yourself about how pissed you with the whole process. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's good for people. And it's good for people to hear different perspectives too. You know,
it is.
You got my perspective. I don't want to play the game. You got Mike and Richard, who are masters of playing this game, and they love this game. Goes to show you might need to, learn to play the game, love to play the game, or you might not want to be in the game at all.
Yeah,
this is true.
That's it. Could be that simple.
Yep.
So,
well, we've reached a part of the show where we've got to flip it over to you, Mike, and you get to ask us a question or two, see how we can maybe be helpful to you, and then we'll let you out of here.
I mean, fantastic. First of all, Richard and Scott, really thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed the discussion. One of the best discussions I've had on a kind of format podcast like this. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wait, he just said we had a format, Scott.
Yeah,
well,
that's quite insulting. He just insulted us.
No. Well, he means format. And it's a format. It's not in person. In person is a format.
Exactly.
Over Zoom is a format. He's not drilling us too hard. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm building with a really talented team at the moment, like most people are probably, an enterprise AI product in the sales environment. So this thing is aimed at solving a few problems. It helps you qualify opportunities better. It helps you draft the first proposal, and it helps you score that proposal before you send it in. So we're at the stage whereby, we're probably going to launch it in the autumn. But obviously we've got to sell this thing into lots of companies. How do you approach tech sales in a way which doesn't you don't sell too much too quickly, because then it falls over, but you sell it into organizations that can be referrers and recommenders and advocates. For a very early stage company, we will be literally starting off. What would you recommend is the best way to kind of start to build the sales pipeline and convert first stage customers?
We will have probably two very different approaches to this idea.
Go ahead. You can give your idea first.
So I have no issue at all when I can find the right type of company where I have the right relationship and I give it away, right? My beta customers, right? Because I need better product feedback. I need all this stuff. But in the beginning, when I do this with them, I get very specific about, I will do this for you in exchange for these things. And in a year, if we move forward, we're going to have to move to commercial terms.
Sure.
Right. So I will horse trade that, because the biggest challenge I see with startups is, well, who are you working with? Who's used you? Who's all that stuff? And for me to give the way, and again, I'm thinking of a SaaS solution to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's a SaaS solution. Yeah, it is.
Right. That if I can get 2 to 3 good stories from quality people, it's not going to matter, because you're going to make deals the first 2 years of your company that you will never make again. And in hindsight, you'll be like, why the fuck did I do that? And it was because you needed to leverage the logos and you needed to leverage the stories. So you have to be really wise about how you do it. But that is my approach, which I think a lot of people do. I think they overdo it, and then they don't know how to actually price themselves when they start to have real conversations, because they've already given it away for free. So they have that emotional, how much value do I really have? So that's my approach for the first 2 or 3. I give it away.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, I don't disagree about giving it away, especially strategically. You know, you find the right people that you can give it away to in exchange for some free PR and publicity and press and word of mouth and referrals and stuff like that. So I don't have any issue with that, actually. But what I have been having people do lately is essentially build out a referral team, a referral syndicate, whatever you want to call it. So you get 100 versions of me and Richard and Mike to sign referral partnerships. And then you just put a list of the companies and the decision makers that you want to talk to in front of them, make it a little bit easy for them. And I can send you, I wrote a whole asset playbook thing around this that I'm happy to send you if you.
I'd love to see that. Yeah, thank you. That'd be great.
And you just put this little, like Excel file together, and it's like company name, VP of sales, here's his LinkedIn profile, and you just put it in front of all these referral partners and say, hey, you guys know any of these people well enough to broker an intro? Yeah. And I look through a list like that. I usually know, call it 5% of people. Yeah. So if you send me a list of 100 and I know 5, you got 95 to go. You send the 95 to the other 99 people in the group. Shit, if they all know one person, your whole list is knocked out.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, let's say you got a $10,000,
it's a great idea.
Or average contract value, whatever. Right. Yeah. So you go 10,000. I got to do math, Richard, because I suck at it. Times 100 people. That's $1 million pipeline you just opened up. Yep. In the blink of an eye, with no cold messaging, no picking up the phone, no picking up email. Yeah. All dual opt-in meetings and appointments on your calendar. Off you go.
And there's a couple of other benefits of that too, that I don't know, Scott, if you put in the playbook, but it also made me think that, holy shit, I get to practice my messaging to 100 people and figure out what messaging. I get to practice my messaging to different titles and roles to figure out what made them take them. Like it goes way beyond just this piece. Yeah. It's like there's, it's kind of a gift that keeps giving. Right. And granted, your goal is to let me get to customers first before I figure out all these persona stuff, but you will have a data set that you could go back to at some point, And
in fact, if you join those two ideas together, it's really clever. You take the first 3 to 5 customers, heavily discount for free in certain instances, you trade stuff, And then when you've got the logos and the credibility, you go to the referral list, and that blows out your pipeline in the first 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you have to do one over the other. I mean, I think to Scott's point, you know, I don't know you have to go give it out to 3 people first. You know, like I said, you could just go to the 95 and see what you happens. Get. Yeah. So
brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant.
Cool.
Yeah. Welcome.
Yeah. Mike.
And I've got one other question.
Oh, yeah.
I've got one more question for each of you. So same question, Scott. What's the biggest thing that you would attribute your success to? And it has been very successful over the last kind of 20 years of selling. What would you tell someone who's starting out?
Richard Harris.
Yeah.
Is the answer.
In a way, that's true, because a long time ago, a friend of mine and a employee of Richard's tried to get Richard to take an interview with me, and Richard denied the request, said I wasn't qualified and had no shot. So in a way, I do credit Richard, because I've spent my entire career proving people wrong.
Okay.
Counted me out. And I'm petty like that. I'm competitive like that. I invent sort of sleights of hand, very similar to stories you read about Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, or those kinds of things. So I don't, it's difficult for me to fully say, but I think a big part of it is just like me continually trying to prove myself
right
and prove other people wrong.
Brilliant. Richard?
What was the question? I'm old.
What would you attribute? What's the one
his
or
memory.
Two things
his memory.
you attribute your success to?
It's a fear of failure. It's, you know, it's really weird for me. Like I'm way better than I used to be, but I always struggled with mental health. And so I always had imposter syndrome. I still have it, had depression. So I had to find ways to keep myself going. And I don't mean like, oh my God, if I don't have a job, I'm going to kill myself. My depression was never that bad, for anybody who's listening. So I had to find a way, probably somewhat similar to Scott, but in a very different way. It was much heavier. At least it feels heavier to me. Not that I'm trying to prove people wrong, but that I need something to focus on. And so I attribute it to that as my success. And those could be very similar, but just coming from different angles. I think that's a big piece. And then, you know, I would even say my stupidity at a young age of not wanting help and being a traditional Gen Xer, figuring it out along the way, helped me. I pivoted after a while to realize I could do more if I changed that attitude. But I think that was a big catalyst for me. Again, sort of similar to Scott, proving people wrong, but I wasn't good at necessarily looking for or asking for help, where I think Scott is much better at playing that game and moving the chess pieces. Right. I felt like I had to do it on my own, which then goes really deep and goes really psychological to, you know, being angry at my father and all that psychological shit. So I was probably trying to prove myself to him. So thank you. Deep. Yeah. So, well, Mike, Mr. Lander, where can people get a hold of you aside from ihateprocurement.com?
I just bought that domain, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
While we were here.
I could Mike Lander, everybody. And believe me, like if you are learning how to negotiate and you're learning to learn how to run these big deals, Mike is absolutely someone I would want to learn from. So, but where can they get a hold of you?
Thanks, Richard. So 2 easy things. I'm always on LinkedIn. So go on LinkedIn, Mike Lander, find me on LinkedIn, follow my posts, message me, always open to a discussion. And secondly, for more stuff like this, I have like an insights series, not a newsletter, but an insights series. You can sign up on piscari.com and just sign up and you'll get weekly, fortnightly tips on stuff like this.
Cool. This is awesome, man. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. Scott, a pleasure. Good to see you, my brother. Look forward to seeing you when you decide you want to hang out with me in person again.
I'll work on it. All right, everybody. We'll see you all next time. on the Search and
Thanks,
Sales
Richard. Thanks,
podcast.
Scott. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.